All right, we're live, but we'll let it breathe just for a moment here while we bring on Facebook. And then we'll get things cranked up here. We'll get the party started. And we're good. So, welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, we knew Russell Wilson was banged up going into that ugly week 5 Thursday night football loss to the Indianapolis Colts, but we learned yesterday the severity of that injury. Turns out it's a lat tear in his throwing shoulder. You kind of talked, or at least you have talked about it on Twitter, as what it shares its commonalities with the Dak injury. How does this affect the outlook for Russell Wilson, the quarterback, and does it? Well, I'll save asking about how this maybe has affected his play, but what's the outlook, you think?
I don't know that I believe it, all that. It's like, where was this before the game? How come it came out after a bad loss? It seems like a little bit of excuse making for Russell Wilson's poor performances. And like Kliss said, and Kliss is the mouthpiece of the Broncos still, he says it buys Nathaniel Hackett more time, or kind of lessens the criticism on Hackett's shoulders because Russ is now injured. I don't know. I hope it's not severe. I don't want to downplay the injury, but it's going to seem like something he has to play through the entire year. I read he's going to have round-the-clock treatment. He's going to just grind it out and grit it out, but doesn't bode well. His throwing shoulder, it's a multi-week injury. If you don't give it some rest, and you have to just kind of just bear through it, but it's another injury and a long line on this season, Chad. Not much more to say, really. It's not surprising.
Insult to injury. Insult to injury. Injury to insult. I think that's maybe the better way to say it. But I was talking with the great Doc Bear, an emeritus at Mile High Huddle. And, we call him Doc Bear not just as a nickname, but he's actually a doctor. And one of his areas of expertise, Zack, is in pain management. He and I were talking, and he emphasized how, when you're in pain, whether it's a headache or, maybe you suffered a back injury, whatever, like we common folk who are not these elite athletes, right? When you're in pain, it is a serious form of distraction, meaning even like when you go under the weather with a, cold virus or something, whatever, you're not quite yourself, right? You're not quite, you get that like wet wash rag feeling kind of on your brain, and you don't feel like yourself, and everything's dimmer. You're a distracted version of yourself. And when that comes to actual pain, now who knows, Zach, maybe enough Toradol makes that go away. I don't know. But something has to explain, because look, the version of Russ we've seen this season, Zach, it's unprecedented. The first 2 weeks notwithstanding, from basically, I'll say first 3 weeks. So from the Vegas game, stats were improved, but still the way he's seeing the field and all that, like I was watching, I subscribe to Kurt Warner's, film breakdown stuff on YouTube, and he broke down Russ's day against the Colts, and he was just flummoxed. He's like, I don't understand why he's not seeing the field. He's not seeing things that we know he should be able to see. And I think, look, I'm not a big believer in coincidence, and the correlation here is either the new scheme. There's only one explanation. It could be multiple, but it's either new scheme, Zach, or he's in pain, and so he's not himself. What do you subscribe to?
Does the shoulder injury excuse the poor interceptions? To your point, the decision making. I mean, did he hurt his shoulder or did he hurt his brain? Because it seemed like Russell Wilson's brain was on IR against the Colts. I'm sure it plays into, if the injury is legitimate as they're making it out to be, I'm sure it plays into arm strength and the throws that he can make on any given down. But to throw an end zone pick so poorly, to not see KJ Hamler wide open, that's where I'm not buying the excuse of injury. Russell Wilson is not performing at the level the Broncos thought they were getting with him. Injury or not, $250 million to throw 2 picks and have no touchdowns. That's not cutting it.
Honestly, I don't know what to think, but I do know, as I've suffered one major injury in my life. All right. You talk about broken bones and stuff. I've been pretty lucky, but back in 2007, I broke my back, fractured my T4 vertebrae. And I can tell you that when you are in pain, even if you try to manage it with medications or rehabilitation or whatever, all right, the pain, you're not going to be able to completely erase the pain, and it does change you. It distracts you. Like in a real life setting, maybe you're more snappy at your wife or kids, or maybe there's things you would normally do or ways you would normally behave that you don't because you're kind of consumed by it a little bit. Jonathan here says, I was watching the Kurt Warner breakdown of Russ's execution so far. Hey, we were sharing a brain there, big dog. And it hasn't been great. I know Hackett has things to work on, but I'm 50-50 on the blame this far on the season. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, they're in the same boat. They share equal blame here. And it is interesting that they're deciding, as Zach said right now, like, we don't believe in coincidence. Like, that comes out during the single point in Russell Wilson's career where he is the probably most criticized he's ever been. It is convenient. Doesn't mean it's untrue. It doesn't even necessarily mean that it's in any way inflated or whatever. The timing of their decision to release all that information, they knew about the lat tear going into the game. They kept it under their hat till after the game. Now we know why. Jason Bolin, what's up, dude? Thank you for the super chat. He says, I can't believe that amazing feeling I had a little over a month ago has already been replaced with the impending doom feeling we all know. It's unbelievable, really. Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you, bro. Well, that's one thing we tried to warn everybody in the offseason, Zach, is don't look away from this. Don't just think you got it made in the shade. So many moving pieces, so many things still. As encouraging as it was to get Russell Wilson, so many new pieces, unprecedented. Like, we don't know which way exactly for sure this thing is going to turn. What we knew for sure, Zach, was that there would be growing pains.
I think Russell Wilson's biggest problems aren't physical, they're mental. I don't know what's going on with Russell Wilson, the quarterback, or maybe Russell Wilson, the human being. I've heard rumors that there's marital situation issues with Russ and Sierra. The criticism is getting to him about his play. The fact that people think he's washed, the fact that people are making fun of him over Subway ads and Let's Ride, the fact that a lot of Seahawks fans literally wish him ill. It goes way beyond just professional. How about Kyle Brandt taking down Russell Wilson, bringing his wife into it and coming off bitter and jealous and resentful? I have never seen, Russell Wilson's play warrants the criticism, but I'll say it, I have never seen an athlete as, I don't want to say revered, but as decorated as Russell Wilson get so much hate. You think he was Hitler reincarnate, Chad, but he's really not. He's a good guy. He might be a little corny, but he's a good guy and he's been a good quarterback over the course of his career. I think this injury now, because he was taken off the injury report. He had no designation heading into the Colts game. He had that little ding-up injury, as Hackett called it, and then he was taken off. Suddenly after the game, though, it comes out that he has these PRP injections. I'm not buying it. Something stinks here.
Cristiano, thank you, buddy, for that super chat. He says, evening, Priest and MHH, much appreciation. Right back at you, big dog. I think the vitriol, Zach, has something to do, as you mentioned, with kind of some of his corny shtick since he became a Bronco. Like, he just decided to start doing that Let's Ride thing, and he's like really putting it on the nose for everybody. Like, even at the depths of the heartbreak of that loss, and just knowing he's the reason they lost. Broncos country, as he's actually Let's Ride. As he's getting off, and I mean, I actually kind of felt bad for this rich man. This wealthy human. Beautiful wife, beautiful family, more money than he's ever going to need on this earth. I actually pitied him for a moment, but I think that you're right. That's a part of it. What about this, Zach? This is something I've noticed with any player who outkicks his coverage in the league, whether it's an undrafted guy that goes on to do great things or a mid or late round guy that goes on to perform like a first round guy. When eventually a crack in the armor appears and there's like some subject matter there for people to sink their teeth into, the NFL like closes in, because it's like their opportunity to say, see, we knew there was a reason he went in the third round, or, undrafted or whatever.
Yeah, if he would have been playing well, the Broncos were 4-1 or 5-0, no one would be saying anything. But the fact that they already had their narratives built in, and now they can just say, oh, see, we were right. See, it's just plausible deniability with a lot of these analysts. But my problem is when it wades into personal waters. Don't bring up his wife. Don't come off bitter and angry because you didn't get a handshake at the NFL Honor Show. His play warrants the criticism, but all of that other dreck, all of that other static around Russell, I really feel like it's seeping into his brain. That's his biggest problem to me that I've seen through 5 games.
Money Moore says, and thank you for the super chat, my friend. He says, I don't mind the team getting clowned by the league and media because they deserve it at this point. As Zack Kelberman said all offseason, let them hate. Let them hate. It's either going to turn around or it's not. All right. And if it doesn't turn around and it proceeds on this course, Nathaniel Hackett will be a one and done coach. Broncos, of the triumvirate here, I'm talking GM, head coach, and quarterback. Only one guy really has any kind of job security, and that's the quarterback because of the money he's owed. If it continues down that track, you know what? We're going to break it down. We're going to react, and we'll know at the end of the season, hey, they'll probably end up looking for another coach to better maximize what their investment in Russ, and that'll be that. But there's still a lot of rows left to hoe before we get to that being a definitive thing. Lawrence says, so are we going to get Russ HGH treatment, Manning 2.0 time? But in all seriousness, we're lucky the Broncos don't get penalized for not reporting and misleading odds. Listen, before you go off on me about it, I don't care, but bettors are pretty mad right now on Twitter about it. Yeah, I mean, the Broncos did take him off. He was listed on the injury report in terms of the practice report, but on his designation, instead of like questionable, out, doubtful, it just had a dash mark, right, which just implies full go. Doesn't mean he wasn't injured, though. It just showed that the Broncos were trying to impart to their opponent, I think, here, Zach, some, what do you want to call it, competitive, tactical, whatever. Our quarterback's good to go. Turns out he wasn't.
One thing I've learned about Nathaniel Hackett is he's very, I don't want to say dishonest, but he's vague when it comes to injuries. He has a very unique approach, and he's not overly honest. Obviously, now after what came out with Russell, whether it's legitimate or not, I mean, he was dinged up, then he was off the injury report. He played in the game. He jersey swapped with Derek Carr after the game. He seemed to use his shoulder to take his jersey off. He looked fine there. I just think it's way too coincidental, and we don't agree on coincidence, or we don't see coincidence in life, let alone football. For it to come out right after the game that he has this sudden shoulder issue, I don't know. But you talk about Hackett and the coaching. You watch a team like the Giants today, Chad. What they did against the Packers, how good Daniel Jones looks in Brian Daboll's offense. It means the world of difference. And it just makes me feel sorrow and depression that Nathaniel Hackett can't get more out of $250 million Russell Wilson, but Brian Daboll in his first year as well as a head coach is making Daniel Jones and the Giants look like playoff contenders. Coaching.
There's no doubt that, in my opinion, okay, the majority of what's going on here is a disconnect between quarterback and head coach. Not in terms of like a rift where Russ doesn't like Hackett, but in terms of this is not a coach that has figured out how to get the most out of his quarterback yet. That's a problem. The coaches that hit the ground running as first-time guys, and Phil, thank you, buddy. Appreciate you, big dog. The guys who get the most out of their teams, all right, in the first year as a head coach, they figure that out quite quickly. And Cristiano, thank you, buddy, about the super chats. So many questions, coaching, management. We feel you, big dog. Brian Daboll is probably a guy who's meant to stay in the league because he took what – many people really considered to be kind of leavings, a bust. And it's early yet, but the Giants are trending in the right direction. Broncos didn't even talk to Brian Daboll. Yeah. They didn't even interview him in this past coaching cycle. Now, before you completely crucify George Paton for not even talking to Brian Daboll, there was a lot of stuff in the media, a lot of buzz that he was told that the job was his in New York if he wanted it. He already lived in New York to get to coach a major media market, New York Giants, and they were just basically handing you the job. It was kind of a no-brainer for Brian Daboll, in other words, all right? So he was his agent and stuff was basically putting out feelers for teams when they would check with them. No, I'm keeping my focus on this Giants job because he knew he was getting it. So you don't want to completely castigate George Paton for not taking a guy like or interviewing a guy like Daboll, Zach, but there is an issue here. Are we supposed – seriously, think about this. Are we supposed to assume that a coach who can't get basic rudimentary game management issues down, that everything else is just perfect, like he's great everywhere else, but this – no. It's like that old saying, in a customer service way. If it's happening to me, it's happening to everybody, all right? Same thing. If you're seeing egregious lapses, Zach, in this area, it's happening in every facet, including the offense, including – the coaching of the quarterback.
Yeah, you're right about Dayball. It was a package deal and fait accompli in New York because the GM was hired with Dayball. That was his boy as well. But you look at Kevin O'Connell with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. You look at Mike McDaniel with Tua in Miami. I mean, these are all first-time coaches, and they're making more than hay. They're making victories. They're making winning seasons. What do the Broncos have to show for it? Nothing. They can't score a touchdown in prime time at home against a team like the Colts that's on the ledge, and all you got to do is just push them off. We talked about it a lot last year. And there were a few things that came out after the Colts game we haven't gotten a chance to talk about either on the radio show, on the podcast, privately, whatever. The team takes on the complexion of their head coach. It's something we said about Vic a lot. Well, this head coach admits he said, I got the go to call a certain play. Got the go from who? Who's your overlord? I mean, who is your God that you're answering to here? And he also said he second guesses every play call. Now, if I'm Russell Wilson, I'm owning up to my own bad performance, missing KJ, for example, the interceptions. But if that's my leader, if that's the guy I'm looking to, I don't feel confident. And if I have any sort of mental struggle going from Seattle to Denver, dealing with the fan criticism, dealing with the media criticism, dealing with his own personal issues, perhaps, and then your one rock is supposed to be your coach, and your coach is second guessing everything he's calling into you, there's something seriously wrong with the confidence and pride that Nathaniel Hackett has. I want him to be a little more alpha because so far, Chad, he has shown me to be a beta as a head coach.
Gary Leeds Palmer, the GLP in the house. Great to see you tonight, brother. Thank you for the stars. We had so much fun hanging out with you at the meet and greet. Great to see you, buddy. Andrew, we missed you at the meet and greet, but we know you were there with us in spirit. This is good. Here's what Zach's alluding to in case you guys are scratching your head. In fact, this is an article right now. Shout out to Keith Cummings. It's viral. It's just crushing right now at milehighhuddle.com. Here's what Hackett said about the post-game, what he said post-game about that 4th and 1 decision. Quote, we wanted to win the game. We hadn't moved the ball very well the whole night, and I thought we had a spectacular drive to get all the way. Hold on. That's not the right quote. Where is it? It's down farther. Here it is. For us to take, no, that's not it. It's, where the Sam heck is it? It's in here somewhere. No, that's where we go from here. Hang tight one sec, guys. I'll find it. We wanted to win the game, given the green light. I don't know where it is, but I'll just paraphrase it, okay? So he was told that I got the go-ahead. I got the green light. I got the go-ahead to go for it on 4th and 1. Now, Zach, let me just steel man this and give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe what he was saying is all coaches do this, all right? Not even so much do this. It happens because the way the communication chains work in game situations is if it's pivotal or whatever, analytics guy all of a sudden pops into his ear and says, yeah, hey, coach, we like this situation. If you did feel like you wanted to go for it, we do like this. Okay, cool. So he knows on the probability side of things, it's in his favor or whatever. So this could have just been a situation, Zach, on 4th and 1, game on the line. But hey, coach, we do like this. We like this. Go ahead and go for it is kind of our call. And it was a poor choice of words, in other words.
I think you're excusing away a lot of who Nathaniel Hackett is and a lot of his detriment to the team as the coach, because one of his first moves when he was hired, Chad, was bringing in a coach for the coaches. Isn't that your job responsibility? Isn't that why they hired you as the head coach of a football team? John Vieira, the instructional designer, and then he needed Jerry Rossberg to come in out of retirement to help him with clock management. It seems like he asks around and kind of workshops, play call, opinion, whatever. And if enough people agree, then he'll go with it. But he needs to put his damn foot down and be the head coach. They didn't hire the analytics guy to coach the Broncos. They didn't hire John Vieira or Derek Haithcock to coach the Broncos. They hired Nathaniel Hackett. And if you watch Brian Daboll on the sideline, after the game, he was fist pumping. He was dropping F-bombs. That's an excitable guy who takes ownership of his football team and his offense. I don't want to say the Broncos got it wrong, but when you look at someone like the Giants and Daboll, they definitely got it right.
Jeff says, and thank you for the super chat, Jeff. What's your guys' take if Russell is burnt? We can be a bad team another 7 years. Peyton hired Hackett. The GM has to be cringed in front of the new owners. All right. So what's your take if Russell's burnt? Do you think Russell Wilson is washed, Zach?
I need a little more sample size because he looked really good. I wasn't saying, no one was saying he was washed after the Raiders game. He looked almost like the old Russell Wilson in that for the most part, but then he kind of just, the wheels came off against Indy. I want to see the season play out a little longer. If this injury, that's his built-in excuse now. Oh, I have the PRP injections in my throwing shoulder. Give me that honeymoon year. Next year we'll attack it. I don't want to say he's washed, but the Broncos are definitely stuck with him now. $250 million. That deal doesn't even kick in yet for a few years. So they have to ride or die with Russell Wilson. I hope he's not washed. He's still pretty young, 33 going on 34. Not like he's 40 years old, but it's not looking good, if only for a return on investment so far.
Zeus McPeak in the house. Thank you for the super chat. A Mount Rushmore super chat superstar here at MHH. Hi, right back at you, brother. Hope you're doing well. We've missed you, Zeus. Ben Wallman says, are we going to sign someone like Eric Fisher to give us some help? I don't think so, but maybe. I don't know. I think once this week is over, so Tuesday, we'll start getting some answers on that front if the Broncos have designs on bringing anyone in because, Garrett Bowles, done for the year. Ronald Darby, done for the year. I mean, and then we learned long snapper Jacob Bobenoyer, Zach, going to miss some time. And then the Russell Wilson injury. Literally every single game, your bodies are dropping, like your key guys are going down, with maybe the exception of I'm not going to try and recount every game, but that's what it feels like. LD Williams on Twitch, good to see you. Thank you for being with us, my friend. Says, I'm new to Twitch, but I can't pull up Mile High Huddle on Facebook anymore to follow up with you guys. Don't know how that happens. I don't know either, dude. There's 100,000 people that follow that page, so that's weird. George Fox, I feel Russ is a good guy, but I think he's become a diva. But our coaching staff needs to get their crap together or we're not going anywhere. MHH for life from Southwest Florida. That's awesome, dude. For what it's worth, Zach, on that question, I don't think Russ is washed. I really don't. First of all, players are allowed to have a bad game. Now, Russ has not really had a great game yet in 5 swings at the plate as a Bronco. And that was a really, really bad game. You could argue he wasn't good in Seattle, the Seattle game, I mean. You could argue he was not good for 3 quarters against Houston, but he put together that one drive at the end. Same the next game against the Niners. He's kind of been butting up against it. Like you're just waiting for him to kind of break through whatever ceiling is. Just barely, you've seen him kind of grasping at it. And then, as you said, in the Raiders game, statistically takes a big step forward. But what you didn't see was those clutch plays in the fourth quarter that he had delivered up to this point. Then he completely unravels in the Colts game, like just a horrible game. The type of interceptions, I mean, Russell Wilson has always been very, very stingy with the ball. It's always been really hard to pick that dude off just because he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He's smart about that. But, talking to Doc Bear, again, Zach, I'm going to bring this up about pain, okay? Pain management experts like Doc Bear, quote, pain affects concentration, memory, attitude, and consciousness. So if you put that in context, Zach, with what Russell Wilson's purported injury is, all right, he's not himself. And if that's the case, and this is an injury where, for it to heal, you need to be able to just rest it. He can't rest it. He's going to be aggravating it many times per week. He's going to be dinged up like this all season long. So is this the version of Russ we expect to see the whole rest of the year?
If he's not himself, then eat a damn Snickers bar, man. Like when Tom Brady got hurt, you know what he said when he hurt his shoulder? It's football. It happens. That's a 45-year-old saying that. So again, I'm not leaning too much on the injury excuses because Russ wasn't all that good before he hurt his shoulder, if indeed he hurt his shoulder recently. I mean, he's been kind of poor and inconsistent the entire year. Speaking of the injuries, it's now year after year, week after week, the Broncos are losing a key player or any player to a debilitating season-ending injury. If this was any other team, when it was the Chargers losing every player, everyone said fire their training staff, replace the training. When can we start to ask those questions about what's going on behind the scenes in Dove Valley? It is literally not 1 year, 2 years. It is multiple years where the Broncos are getting killed by injuries. And Russ's shoulder, that's their golden boy, $250 million. If that doesn't spark any debate about, I'll say his name, Lauren Landau, then what really will? I'm just so sick of the injuries being the biggest detriment. Not necessarily anything else. It's always the injury bug.
it's one of those things that's not brought up by media that are beat writing and all that because the team frankly doesn't like those. It's just viewed as an off limits topic for whatever reason, and we've never really allowed ourselves to be bound by any of those limitations. And in this case, we've been calling that spade a spade, Zach, for what, 2.5 years? About the 2020 season is when we really started, grabbing our pitchforks and saying, what is going on here? The Duchess, after some time to sleep on it, she says, I still have hope. I think we'll iron out the kinks. And what choice do we have? Love you, Michaela. Thank you for the super chat. Here's the thing, guys. I know it seems counterintuitive after what you saw from Russ on Thursday night, but I actually have faith in Russell Wilson. Just if for no other reason, his body of work, his resume. There's so much sample size there that I'm just not ready to go ahead and turn the page and say, oh, this dude's washed or nothing good's going to come of this season, just because Russell Wilson has a habit of proving people wrong and naysayers wrong. The doubts I have about this team start and end with the coach. All right. I'm sorry. I like the special teams coach. All right. Dwayne Stukes has impressed me for the most part. I really like Ejiro Evero on defense. Nathaniel Hackett's competency, not just to be a leader and a game manager and all that stuff, but as a play caller, having a command and a feel for his own scheme and, what works best for the players within that scheme. He talked about, and he's still in his last 2 press conferences, post game and even the one on Friday, Zach, he's talking about how fitting things to his players and all this. I'm not seeing that come out in the wash in any way, shape, or form. My doubts for this team, unfortunately, they start with the head coach, and that's why I don't really have anything good to report by way of a encouraging, bold prediction. I do have faith in Russell Wilson. And if there is a reason, Zach, a silver lining or a reason to be optimistic, hang your hat on something, it's perhaps Russell Wilson figures it out and can kind of rise above a head coach who's not an asset. It's one thing for a coach, Zach, to not be an asset. All right, like Peyton Manning, for example. Mike McCoy, do you really think he was an asset to Peyton? Even Adam Gase. No. Peyton was an asset to those guys. Let's be honest. So great quarterbacks can overcome and elevate coaches around them, all right? But in the case of Nathaniel Hackett, we have to seriously wonder if he's not only not an asset, Zach, but a true threat detriment to the quarterback, to this whole team.
Yeah, it's one thing to win in spite of your coaching. It's another thing to lose because of your coaching. And it's something we've dealt with and talked about for 5 years, going back to VJ and then Vic and now Nathaniel Hackett. I'm not excusing him at all. I think he does deserve more blame. It's 60-40 on Hackett, I feel like. But in the Colts game, Hackett wasn't the one on the field throwing those 2 bad picks. Hackett wasn't the one that was locked on Cortland when he should have been looking to his right and seeing KJ Hamler wide open. That game was not on Hackett to me. You can talk about 4th and 1. He's always going to come up small until he learns otherwise, it seems like, as a rookie coach. But that was on Russ to me.
Right, but here's the thing, Zach, not to cut you off. That is on Russ. But the question is, why? What is it? Why is he not seeing the field like we know he normally does?
I don't know. I'm sure coaching has something to do with it. Maybe the playbook isn't meshing well with his ideologies as a quarterback, but maybe Russell Wilson, not washed, but maybe he's on the end of the spectrum where he needs a little bit of a better team around him in order to win. Maybe he's not the quarterback that we all thought was going to come in and be like Peyton Manning, in the sense that he's going to make every single factor around him better, every single one, from the O-line to the running backs to the tight ends to the coaching. Maybe it wasn't ever going to be that. Maybe he needed more of an ideal situation. But what is ideal about what he's in right now? Nothing. He lost his running back. He lost his best left tackle or his best lineman. He lost his number 2 receiver already. His coach is going through it right now. So it's just a crap show all the way around. It's hard to exonerate one or the other when there's so many people complicit for this mess.
It's like at a riot when things get burnt down and destroyed. It's like, who are you going to arrest? Right?
Yeah.
Who are you going to hold accountable for this? Andrew, sup, bros and fam. Russ needs to get out of his own head. It hurts for the hype we had, but injuries might put a nail in this season, and that's true, buddy. Howie says, hey, guys, can Russ not see over the middle of the line? I never see a short route over the middle, short to mid-range, if not more bootlegs is a good option. Yeah, I'm not seeing a problem with him not utilizing the middle of the field. I'm seeing a problem with him not recognizing, like go watch it's really worth watching because there's a million guys that break down film on YouTube, right? Quarterback specifically. But if you really want to learn something, what better person to learn from than a Hall of Fame quarterback? So one of the things that Kurt Warner brought up in his breakdown of Russ's Thursday night performance was that like simple things that he knows Russ should know, and he's seen him execute before, like knowing where your hots are pre-snap, understanding pre-snap where the pressure's coming from. It's like, Zach, when people hate talking about or hate Chris Collinsworth as a game caller here, but he would always talk about how the great quarterbacks throw into the blitz, right? They sense and Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, these guys, that's what they do. Because if that's where the pressure's coming from, that means that zone's going to be light. And these simple things that Russell Wilson knows, Zach, these are things he knows he's missing. It's not coming out in the wash. And so to me, I really do think, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist. I think it's a problem with coaching emphasis or connection to the coaching for whatever reason, however you want to try and explain it. Hackett's coaching is not reaching Russell Wilson the way it needs to. And I think a big part of that game can be explained by he wasn't himself in pain. Unless we really do want to put our tinfoil hats on and go down a rabbit hole of, conspiracy. We do know he had injured his shoulder in the Raiders game. We knew that. We didn't know the extent of it. I think you give him some time, some R&R, and you hope Russ can overcome Nathaniel Hackett. I'm just not hanging my hat on it.
Man, that's crazy that we're even saying that sentence. I didn't think we'd utter that on October 9th, considering how much hype there was for this season. Can Russ overcome Nathaniel Hackett? We thought the marriage was going to be this amazing partnership. I don't know. It sounds like a lot of excuse making for us, but you do have to wonder why a 9-time Pro Bowler, who, by the way, a lot of Seahawks fans or Russ detractors point to his injury-marred 2021 campaign when he had career worst numbers. But if you look at the stats after he came back from the injury, he looked like elite Russell Wilson. So you have to wonder what changed from that point to the time he got on the field with the Broncos. It's not a familiarity issue with the reps and the offensive line and the preseason. That's put to bed now. We're well into the season. Is it coaching? Is it off the field for Russell Wilson? Is the criticism creeping into his head? Is he physically not the same quarterback? We don't know. But you're right. I mean, we have to just, at this point, hope that he can overcome his offensive play caller and head coach. Man.
Scott, I want to grab this super chat from the great Kathy Lund, and then there's a 629 from LD I want to get. Kathy, thank you. It's great to see you. Thank you for the super chat. She says, all the injuries, the poor coaching, the lack of chemistry, and only 5 draft picks next spring. I'm legit concerned. I feel you, but that doesn't actually trip me out too hard because so much of this team's talent, Zach's already on injured reserve, meaning you're going to get them back next year. Now, George Payton literally promised Broncos country that he would have more draft picks come the 2023 draft than he currently did when he made the promise. So we'll see on that, Zach. But it's just crazy. If you go look now, go to denverbroncos.com, go to team, go to roster, scroll down to injured/reserved. Oh, it's brutal.
You could start a whole new team with who's on IR pretty much. I mean, it's just a who's who of Broncos stars and really, really good players that you lean on. You lose Tim Patrick, you lose Javonte, you lose Garrett Bowles. I mean, offensive alone, not just defensive injuries. Those are your foundational players, man. I mean, I don't know how any quarterback, let alone a 34-year-old coming into a new system, new city, new team, all this criticism, all this static, rookie head coach who's kind of peeing his pants every Sunday or Thursday, whatever it may be. I don't know. I want to excuse Russ, but I can't get those 2 picks out of my mind. They were so egregiously bad that not even Drew Lock would have done that last year. That's how bad they were.
See, and I don't think we have to excuse him. Just because there are factors contributing to a poor performance doesn't excuse the poor performance. It's like my boy, if he goes to school with a big test, but he wakes up that morning with a headache or, the beginnings of a cold or whatever, you know how it is with kids, and he flunks the test, I'm going to be focused on the fact that, dude, you flunked the test. Not that you weren't feeling good. Like, that sucks, but like, dude, you flunked the test. So we're just talking about here some of the factors, some of the context that might explain what seemed, Zach, inexplicable Thursday night. LD, this is a topic I wanted to get to. He says, to be honest, guys, do you think Nathaniel Hackett was a mistake hire? And do you think he is a one and done head coach, Zach?
Chicken or the egg, it was the Russell Wilson a bigger mistake, or was hiring Hackett what made Russell Wilson who he is now? Apparently, that's the question we're trying to solve, and we do not know. Hackett's resume, a lot of people pick that apart because they say he leaned on Matt LaFleur and A-Rod in Green Bay. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe they did someone like Brian Daboll, who worked closely with Allen in Buffalo and made him a better quarterback and had a better track record. I don't know about one and done. It's too soon for that. Let's see how the Broncos finish out the year. It's still really early. They're still technically in it. They're not eliminated from the playoffs or contention. So I don't know about one and done, but if things don't improve, if they keep getting embarrassed like the Chargers game, another primetime game coming up for the Broncos, how many times can the Walton Penner family be shown in that suite trying to muster a smile or a clap or some sort of positivity? And how much can they stand that, knowing their team, their $5 billion investment, is now an NFL laughingstock, more so than they've been over the last 5 years? That's what the biggest worry for Nathaniel Hackett should be.
Based on what we've seen now, I'm going to tell you, I do think Nathaniel Hackett was a mistake hire. All right. I'm open. I'm not saying that as like some kind of a, no, lock it in, dude. He's definitely one and done. Like, I remain open to the possibility that he can rebound from this and that these, because we learn the way human beings learn best is by doing. And the lessons that we do learn are more solidly hammered home through our failures than our successes. So if that's the case, a lot of subject matter to edify and improve the education here of Nathaniel Hackett. If he continues on this trajectory, as Zach just mentioned, of every national spotlight game is like a collapse and an embarrassment, yeah, he's one and done. He's on the course right now. What I'll tell you, Nathaniel Hackett is on the course to one and done, but it's still early. He can alter that. He can change that. Do I expect it to happen? Well, Zach, if the best predictor of the future or future behavior is past behavior, then the answer to that is no. I can't expect him to suddenly turn it around. But again, the wild card here is the presence of a 9-time Pro Bowler in his 11th year. Sebastian, I picked probably the worst or best game to go to. I'm going to the Monday night game against the Chargers. No miracle happening. Well, that's going to be a good one. That's going to be a good one. Austin H., having an offensive coach should allow the offense to be dynamic and trend upwards. The offense being horrible to this point, major problem, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we killed VJ because he was a defensive-oriented coach when the defense fell apart. We killed Vic for the same thing. That's their side of the ball. Well, this is Hackett's side of the ball, and it's not cutting the mustard. And can he lean on the inexperience when someone like a Giro Evero is in a first-time role as well, and the defense looks like a top 5 unit, maybe even better than that? He looks like he's been around for years doing this. He looks like Wade Phillips incarnate. That's how good he's been. So Hackett has looked amateurish. Hackett has looked like he's seen the play calls for the first time in his life. He's put on the headset for the first time in his life. He looks scared out there. He literally turns red with embarrassment. I just don't know. Maybe he's cut out to be an NFL head coach. A lot like VJ or Vic, for example, are just much better number 2s than they are number 1s. Maybe that's the case with Hackett.
We've got the LLC jumping in with some stars on Facebook. It's great to see you. Thank you. You know, Zach, it's one of those things. It's like I keep reverting back to parenting metaphors. All right. But it's like when you bust your kid doing something they maybe shouldn't have been doing. All of a sudden, all the signs, you're like, oh, now I recognize the signs. I should have been more suspicious on A. I should have questioned B a little bit more because da-da-da, right? Well, when the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett, Zach, we kind of brushed under the rug that for the last 3 years, he has not been a play caller. We're like, he's coaching Aaron Rodgers and he's been a play caller before. We didn't really put too much stock into it, but now you got to kind of question the wisdom of putting all your eggs in a basket of a guy who has not called plays for 3 years. What does that mean? That means he's out of practice, dude. Has he been involved in the game planning? Yes. Has he coached players these past 3 years? Yes. Has he been the man who, by sheer force of his wits, has had to call those plays game in and game out, not for 3 years at least? We should have probably been a little bit more suspicious of that. And the Broncos, that got brought up initially, and they swept on. They didn't want to talk about that either. So George Paton did look past that for a reason. The question is, what was that reason?
He was so likable. The tacos were good the night he was hired. I mean, he made an impression. And
it's like Goofy, dude. Every time that dude's up, from Disney, it's like Goofy.
You know how important first impressions are, Chad. They can make or break you, and they can hide some of your deficiencies and make your resume look a little cleaner and squeakier. And maybe that's what happened with Peyton. But when we talk about one and done with Hackett, why I pause at that being a possibility is that directly reflects on George Payton, because that's his first hire as the Broncos GM. He picked his guy, and he had a vast pool that he limited down to hire Nathaniel Hackett. I wonder, Vic got 3 years, VJ got 2, even McDaniels got into his second year. Do the Broncos buck history and make Hackett a one and done coach? You seem to think so. I want to see it play out a little more, but I would not be surprised at this rate. Put it that way.
I do too. I'm not making any. I'm saying I want it to play out, and it's going to play out more. I'm telling you that when a coach, it's not just that he's underperformed. There have been categorical on national television embarrassments that this head coach has put the team through. I mean, even having the fans in the stands resort to counting down the play clock. And then that Colts, I'm telling you right now, Peyton will shed no tears if he has to fire Nathaniel Hackett at the end of the season to save his job. If it is that bad, it's one and done. Because what actually makes Hackett worse than VJ, worse than Vic, is he's got a franchise quarterback, and it's still a crap show. Like, how could it have been worse than VJ and Vic with a franchise quarterback? Like, you don't survive that. Simon, what's up, dude? Up in Canada, what's going on, big dog? He said it's tough to believe Russ has 10 good seasons, and then overnight he's washed. You're right. That's why you shouldn't believe it. I need a full season before judging. I will, however, judge the coaching and be looking for heads to roll if this continues. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. All right. Body of work is a key factor here. Cristiano, even Russ's deep shot lack of success seems to be related to bad vision and anticipation. I agree with Zach that issues seem to be more in his head than his body. Yeah, and that's the thing here. Even when you, again, I'll go back to the Kurt Warner film breakdown, which I recommend everybody go find it and watch it. It's all between the ears stuff, Zach. It's not physical limitations. And you go, well, then that means the injury is not affecting it. Not necessarily. Again, when you are in pain and your body's not right, it affects all kinds of different things, concentration, all that stuff. Zach, your response, and then we'll grab Lilo here.
Well, you're right in the sense that it seemed Russell Wilson came in and Hackett ruined him overnight. And if he were to get fired, it's because right now leading his epitaph would be the coach that ruined a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback, a $250 million investment. That is what Hackett's claim to fame is in Denver right now. But to the mental aspect, or Russ taking ownership, or us giving him the responsibility and blame for the on-field play, there was a pass early in the Colts game to Jerry Jeudy. If he would have thrown it to the outside a little more and led him, it would have been a big completion. His arm strength, notably on that pass, was fine. It was the placement of the football that led me to say, is this Russ, or is this some other schmo first, second year quarterback? This is a throw you need to make when you're a $250 million player. I don't know, man. I don't know too much about him beyond this last year. I mean, he was in Seattle for 10 years. He seemed like a pretty buttoned up guy, but still waters run deep. I've always subscribed to that in my life. And we have a person or a player like Russell Wilson who is so robotic and so buttoned up and doesn't show emotion and is so just canned all the time. You really wonder, at least I do, what is going on behind the scenes? What is he really thinking? What is he really like behind closed doors? And maybe it's more of a struggle than we all know for us right now.
Guile from Street Fighter jumping in to say, watch the wild card round, Hawks versus Rams. This is Russ against elite defense. Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. It'll come out in the wash. David McElrath, what's up, dude? The Denver Broncos, already have the most players on injured reserve. Shouldn't they be looking at conditioning and training? We were talking about that, Dave, in case you missed it at the top of the show. Well, not necessarily the top of the show, but earlier this episode. Yeah. I think fans need to start. Let me put it this way. I shouldn't say. I don't blame fans if they want to collectively be more vocal on that very issue. Scott, I want to grab this one at 6:40 from Cristiano, because this brings up a possible solution here, Zach. He says, your take on hiring an offensive babysitter for Nathaniel Hackett. All right. You don't need to hire one. Guess what? Your offensive coordinator has never called plays in the league, but you hired him to be your offensive coordinator. Don't give the duties to him. If you sit Nathaniel Hackett down in terms of play calling and say, hey, just be head coach, let Clint Kubiak do it. Now, Clint Kubiak, he did call plays in Minnesota, all right, to mixed reviews, but at least he has it more on his recent resume than Nathaniel Hackett for what it's worth. I don't think there's anything the Broncos can or will do to bring in some kind of a babysitter for Nathaniel Hackett on the offensive side. If anything changes, Zach, it's going to be he relinquishes play calling duties to one of his assistants.
I think the Justin Alton hire was a complete waste of time and a mockery of the coaching process. He was his boy. That's the only reason he was hired. It was like Vic Fangio hiring Ed Donatel to be the DC. It literally made no difference to the operation because Hackett's calling his own plays. But if he needs a babysitter, which is a word I despise in this context, it's so bad, it's such a bad look for a coach. What does that say about Hackett's prowess? They hired him to be the leading voice, the leader of men, this offensive savant, this, progressive, very modern play caller, and he's been anything but that. It reminds me back in the old Herm Edwards Jets days when they had to hire a clock consultant for him named Dick Curl. I mean, that was a horrible blight on Herm Edwards' resume, Chad. And it would be the same thing if Nathaniel Hackett hired a babysitter to help him with the offense. That's his side of the ball. If it was a defensive consultant, special teams consultant, that's one thing. But that is your bread and butter. You got to eat that up.
Jeremy, I don't care how much Russ is getting paid. I'd rather have Brett Rippon under center at this point. I disagree with you, but here's what I will say, Jeremy, is, Zach, you've talked a lot about how after his injury last year, he exited. He missed some time to get the surgery, I want to say, on his injured digit. And then when he came back, he was back to classic Russ. Maybe the Broncos need to sit Russ. Like because they're getting 10 days in between games here, so they have a little time to see how this treatment affects that shoulder. But if they start getting close to the Monday night game, and I'm talking Thursday and Friday's practice, and Russ is not himself, and he's still, you know what? Sit him down another week. Let Brett Rippon go be your backup quarterback. Because what did we say about the backup? Hey, if you got to lean on him for one or two games because your guy goes down, hey, that's what they're there for. You just don't want Brett Rippon taking over as your quarterback for the season. If you're really, I'm sorry, Jeremy, I know it's been bad, but you cannot be advocating bench Russell Wilson for Brett Rippon. I mean, that's like willingly walking into the meat grinder. It's only a short matter of time before that dude will be wolf droppings. He'll have been consumed by the wolf pack that is the NFL.
Plus, what happens if Brett Rippon comes in and starts outplaying Russ and the Broncos have a quarterback competition on their hands? That's the last thing they need after making that blockbuster trade and paying Russell Wilson $250 million is for him to be usurped or Wally pipped by Brett Rippon, of all people. It's not like the Broncos have a young, exciting Trey Lance on their roster behind Russ. They have Josh Johnson and Brett Rippon. Not two very exciting options. You're stuck with him, man. If he can play, he will play, and the Broncos are going to try to wring everything they can out of that major investment. That's how I see it playing out.
Lilo, give Hackett the first 8 games until the bye and see how he did. Could go 5-3 or 2-6 entering the bye, give or take. They walk him under 500. No. Honestly, Nathaniel Hackett, I'm trying to think now. Urban Meyer was fired mid-December. He didn't quite get all 17 games his first year. He was fired. I was just reading about this the other day, somewhere like middle of December. Nathaniel Hackett, one thing that so far has separated those two, well, many things, I guess. This is not apples to apples, but Urban Meyer created an off-the-field distraction, a couple of them actually, that made it really easy for the Jaguars to fire him in season with only a couple of games to go. But still, I can't imagine really, unless it just gets to epic proportions of on the big stage coaching incompetence. It's like right now I'm seeing here comments, Zach, I hate that we're the joke of the league. That you think the Waltons are stoked on that? The Waltons are hating that right now too. Ben Wallman, thank you, big dog. Um, so if that continues, maybe he's fired in season, but at the bye, no, he's not going to get fired at the bye, dude.
Let's look at the Broncos' next few games. They have the Chargers on Monday night at LA. Not going to be easy, but then it lightens up a little bit, and this is the lightest it's going to get until it gets very difficult in the second half. The Jets, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Raiders, and the Panthers. They have to make do with those teams, beat up or not. If they want to compete and they want to get to a certain record by the bye week, they got to take care of the teams in front of you. The problem now is you face a team like the Jets, who blew out the Dolphins today, and they have a better record than the Broncos right now, sadly enough. I wonder, and I shouldn't have to wonder, can the Broncos beat them? There's no more gimme games on the Broncos schedule, but with a injured Russell Wilson, a depleted roster, and a coaching staff going through it, even the Jaguars are going to be a tough battle for them. That's the sad part.
Yep, we're back to flip a coin days with the Broncos. That's why people are so pissed. But again, I err on the side. Right now, the season is still so young relative to the depth of Russell Wilson's resume that I'm still erring on the side of that resume. Might not be right away. Might not be week 6. He suddenly looks more the part of the guy we expect. It might take a little bit longer than that. Honestly, it might. But I still err on the side of I think eventually Russell Wilson's performance will improve. Doesn't necessarily mean the teams will improve because you keep losing players. I mean, at a certain point, when you lose that many stars, that many, first teamers, and no team can withstand that. Ryan, I may overreact and let my feelings get to me after these games, but something's going on with Wilson professionally and personally. Maybe feel for him. Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't heard anything, Zach, about any like personal issues as far as marital. You might have heard something I haven't on that, but he's obviously going through a professional storm right now. We'll see how he navigates it. He's been able to navigate every storm he's ever been in his life. So this would be odd that this is the first one he comes across now. Oh, can't overcome this one. That would be a unique development.
Yeah, far be it for me to play love doctor. I'm not going to wade too much into Russ's marriage like Kyle Brandt wanted to. But I've heard rumors that he wasn't very stoked about him being clowned for Sierra twerking, for example, in that music video a couple months ago. And I think the criticism is the biggest thing that's plaguing Russell Wilson because, again, you boil it down, he might be buttoned up in public, but in private, he's stewing, I feel like, over the hate and the vitriol and the ill wishes he's receiving by his former adoring fans and now the national media and everyone, Broncos country. It's the one safety he had. It was resonating with a new fan base in a new city, and now that fan base is turning on him. That city's turning on him. I think he's going through it mentally. And as Melvin Gordon proved, Chad, the mental, psychological, emotional component to the game is just as important, if not more important, than the physical.
Jolie, thank you for the stars. It's great to see you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he had the fans counting down in the stadium and then being booed every time he leaves the field right now on a punt, etc. Eventually for a guy that's been virtually impervious to, I mean, people have criticized Russell Wilson in the past. Don't get me wrong, but like as that comment said, becoming a national punchline. It's eating at him on some level. Now, what happens next? That's the question, because with Russell Wilson, he's always been a guy who typically gets the last laugh. All right, like whether it's going from, hey, I'm not picked in round 1, I'm not picked in round 2, I'm picked in round 3, and you just paid a guy many, many millions of dollars to be your starter, and I beat him out before the cleats even hit the grass. I'm the starter. To multiple Pro Bowls. Injuries. I mean, the dude has his father's death, so many obstacles that he's overcome, always has managed to find a way to rise above them. What makes us think he's incapable of doing that in this scenario? That's my question. And that's why I still err on the side of might not be immediate fix. And I know fans right now want the immediate fix. And this might be, Zach, another season that is lost to the dustbin of history in terms of playoff outlook. But I do think Russell Wilson will get back on the horse and he'll be coming out guns hot eventually. And you'll see him play much more up to the standard he's known for around the league.
I think realistically, you can boil it down to a couple options in terms of what's going on with the Broncos. Either Russell Wilson is really struggling mentally and the criticism is affecting his physical play. Maybe he's breaking down, Father Time is undefeated, or Nathaniel Hackett broke Russell Wilson. In either scenario, it's such a bad case for the Broncos. It's a position that none of them, not the players, the coaches, the Walton Penner family, nor you or I or anyone in the Broncos landscape thought was going to happen, but here we are.
He's still trying to lead this team. Like even that game against the Colts when he went into the tent for that little stretch to get checked out or whatever, because he got injured running to tackle a guy to whom he just threw the ball, right? Interception. As soon as he came out of the tent and the cameras were panning to Russell Wilson, what was he doing? He was running up and down the sideline like this, like trying to rally the dudes. He's still trying to lead. I think it's going to come out in the wash. I just don't have a feel for when that's going to be because the injury thing makes this kind of all bets are off. The throwing shoulder torn. And then the coaching incompetencies just make this like, man, hard to say how it's going to shake out. But I still am erring on the side of Russell Wilson coming back to the mean, to the standard that we know him for. Patriot Texas. I think it's the 6 years of lousy football that's getting to me. I want the Broncos to win so bad. I just feel it's not going to change. I still hope. I feel you. That's the way you feel, my friend. And you have to decide if you're going to hope what you're going to pin your hopes on, right? You'd probably be remiss at this stage to pin those hopes on a coach who has proven quite clearly that he's in over his head. So if you're going to still hope, and I am too, I'm still hoping, I'm pinning my hopes on the quarterback that's been to 9 Pro Bowls in the last 11 years.
You're right about him still leading and still trying to rally and try to be the leader of the team. But let me tell you, that really gets old quickly and will fall on deaf ears when you're the leader and you're going out there costing the team games.
Yep.
People are going to tune you out, be like, whatever, man, we're not taking our cues from you. And that's when the fractures in the locker room start setting in. You saw KJ Hamler literally slam his helmet in frustration, wouldn't go in the locker room and hear the post-game speech because he was so unhappy with how the offense is playing out, him not getting the ball. That's why Patriot Techs, anyone out there in Broncos country, I'm not going to gatekeep and tell you how to be a fan. You guys are entitled to however you feel, any emotion. It's been a bad 6 years since Peyton Manning, and we all thought that wandering through the desert to get to the playoffs was over, but it was just another mirage. That's the depressing part.
Cristiano says, I still believe in the direction the team is going. Peyton still second-year GM. Offseason focus on a coaching staff and investing draft and free agent dollars on the O-line. Yeah, that's definitely a must-have. Is you gotta find some answers. This O-line, and I get it. You know, they had some draft capital investments and salary cap investments on their O-line, and they wanted to ride that out to a point, but that doesn't excuse them from not taking a tackle with their second or third round pick. I mean, come on, dude. Nick Bonito started showing a little something in this last game. He was actually starting to make a little bit of hay, but Greg Dulcich has been a big, fat nothing burger for this team, and you could have drafted Abraham Lucas. You could have had a right tackle who could now maybe even swing over to left tackle with Garrett Bowles going down. But, Zach, I think we're good. We're almost at the hour mark. You want to do the rundown and we'll say goodbye for tonight?
Yes, sir. Hope you all had a great weekend. Thank you all for tuning in with us tonight. This was the MHH podcast. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already at the MHH pod, the main account at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and our producer Scott at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch, already know what it is, where it is, huddleuppod.com. Check it out if you haven't done so, and facebook.com/milehuddlepod. Like the page and follow that page. Guys and gals, go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every month. But as you see ticking below you, please make sure you do these 3 things for us. Sub, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Shout out to these great supporters and Super Chat superstars. Jason Bolins, great to see you in the chat, my friend. It's good to have you live with us, as always. Cristiano, Jonathan, Money Moore, Jeff C., a legend, Zeus, Mount Rushmore. Michaela, Mount Rushmore. Kathy Lund, one of our longtime community mavens. Austin, Simon up there in Canada, holding it down. Lilo, Guile from Street Fighter. David, Ryan, Patriot Tex, much love and respect, plus our great supporters on Facebook. Gary Leeds Palmer, Ben, Lena, Trey, Phil, Sebastian, Jeremy, Jolie, Howie, frickin' day in the frickin' house. Andrew, George, Lawrence, much love and respect. Try to keep your chin up. All right, we'll see what comes here. You got another 12 games to go, for better or for worse. Leo says, enduring the pain, Hamler was open to win the game in overtime, and Russ could have ran it in to win with the clock down to 0. What does he see that we see? That's the thing. His vision, the way he's seeing the field is not the typical Russ. Something's going on there, and we'll see. I think Russ will respond. I think he'll answer the bell. We'll see, though. George says, I feel Russ needs to cut out the let's ride. It's not working. Yeah, might kind of be like, if you're superstitious, Zach, time to just kind of cut that, but we're out of time, guys. So we'll see you tomorrow, Monday.
Take care, and as always, guys, go Broncos.